Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we do every day on the WDW Pro channel. If you like stuff like this, click the like button. Share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we do covet your comments. Please drop one down below. Now, part of entertainment is also travel and leisure. It's not just movies, it's not just shows. But each and every day, many of us sit around and think about the places that we would like to go, the things that we would like to do. And lately, some of the theme parks, specifically Disney theme parks, have left a little bit of, a little to be desired. But just because we're looking at some of those kinds of things and being critical of them doesn't mean that other places aren't doing fantastic. And so recently, I traveled to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee with Mr. John Golf in order to celebrate his son's bachelor's party. And while there, I stopped by some of the attractions to see how things are going in that part of the country. Now, one of the things that really impressed me is that in Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which, by the way, when you exit the interstate, it's essentially just three towns, Sevierville, which is still a regular kind of town, but also being overtaken by tourism. But then Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg are just consecutive cities that are all about visiting the Smoky Mountains. But these areas have been taken over by alpine coasters, by mountain roller coasters, and I love it. They are so cool. And this is something that I think, I hope is exported all over the country because of how cool this is. Of course, you gotta have mountains. It's not gonna work in Louisiana. It's not going to work in West Texas, and it's not going to work in Florida. But for East Tennessee, it's a great, great idea. Not only did I discover that these mountain coasters are really cool and that they're different than the regular roller coasters you might see at other theme parks, but also, when I went to the roller coaster that you're going to see in this video, there was actually a Chuck Wagon competition, a national competition between people recreating the 1800s and all of their cooking abilities. And that was the kind of authentic culture that you would not see if you went to, let's say, Walt Disney World or even Universal Studios. I'm not trying to be negative, but you get the curated theme park kind of stuff. In this case, I get off this roller coaster and literally a block away, I see all of these covered wagons and a huge competition, and I stop by to investigate and then to interview some of the people participating in this. So take a look, see if you are just as interested as I was, and then ride along with me, and I'm going to narrate why I think these mountain roller coasters are such a big deal for the tourism industry going forward. It was a stunningly beautiful day when we all gathered together at the Alpine Coaster, that's the Smoky Mountain Alpine Coaster in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. The weather was perfect, and I was excited to get some content covering some stuff that's entertainment related but not Disney. However, before I came to the roller coaster, I noticed this huge event taking place next to it. Like I said before, this is the kind of thing that you don't find at a standard theme park, but you can find when you go to Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and you go to these roller coasters. Check out this Chuck Wagon competition, cooking competition, and then we'll ride the coaster together. Check it out.
All right, well, we're doing the bachelor party thing, and we just happen to be here in Pigeon Forge, and there's a Chuck Wagon, I don't even know what you call it, a jamboree, but there's all kinds of shops set up, and we just stopped to get food because we were a little bit hungry, and oh my gosh, the stew is fantastic, and no offense to mama or grandma, this is better than mom's and grandma's. That is blueberry cobbler. Now, they had a choice of either apple, peach, or blueberry, and I don't know if it was the blue vest that the lady was wearing, but I definitely went with blueberry, and it's just fantastic. And the smells that are in the air, and you can just see signs of spring. It's just a beautiful time out here.
Good afternoon, Mitch Morgan, Chuck Wagon cook, down here with JL Cattle Company out of Lebanon, Missouri. I got started Chuck Wagon cooking, it's been 15, 16, 17 years ago with a couple of good friends of mine. And we do it, we enjoy doing it. We do a lot of it for our veterans, raise money for them, but we we come to these competitions, and we just like to keep the heritage going of the cattle drives and the chuck wagon cooks and the crew, you know, just using all their techniques that we still keep alive today.
Out of all your menu, what's your favorite thing to make?
All of it, but we're pretty good at chicken fried steaks and briskets. We've go to a competition in Mojave up in Olathe, Kansas. And I think we've been 9 times, and 8 times we've won meat. So we're pretty good meat cooks. And bread, we're proud of the bread we make. We try to make all good food. Pretty cobblers.
So what is one piece of advice that you would give to an amateur or somebody just starting out who wants to learn how to barbecue in terms of briskets?
Well, if you're going to cook a brisket in a Dutch oven, you want to take that brisket and sear it real good on an open fire. Then you wrap it up with tinfoil. But before you get it all wrapped up, you can lay bacon on it. You can put peppers. You can put onions, and you wrap that up real tight. Put a trivet at the bottom of your Dutch oven, hold that brisket up off the bottom, pour you about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of water in there, and throw the coals to it. In about 4 hours, it will fall apart.
I'm Rhonda Frazier with Town Creek Chuck Wagon from Sparta, Tennessee.
Out of all of the things in this world that people could be doing, the hobbies that they could have, why is doing a chuck wagon and primitive cooking so important?
It's just a heritage event for me. You know, it's back in the we have an 1800s chuck wagon. So it's just keeping heritage alive. It's not something that people do every day. So
for someone who's never been, what can you expect when you go to a chuck wagon or primitive cooking competition?
Everything is prepared in Dutch ovens, cast iron Dutch ovens, and it's just old, authentic, just like a 1800s cattle drive, what you would expect it on the frontier.
You have mentioned that these types of festivals, these competitions and experiences are going away. What is it about them that makes them worthy of efforts to keep the tradition going?
Because it's our heritage. It's where it all started. And it's the old way of how we prepared food back in the old days. If we get back to that instead of fast food, it's so much better.
For someone who is just learning about these cook-offs and these celebrations, how can they get involved?
You can Google, obviously, and find, and especially YouTube, find some chuck wagon events, cast iron cooking events. We do a chuck wagon. I've done a cast iron cooking event for UT, Ag Extension Office locally. So there's outlets out there. You just have to look, but there's not a lot. Missouri, my next function will be in Missouri, Wagons for Warriors, which is a Wounded Warrior project.
I hope at this point that you can see the importance of going out on these adventures, going on travels, and it's not just about Disney theme parks. That's not to hit on Disney. It's also not to hit on Universal or SeaWorld or even Dollywood. In fact, I'll tell you this, having been to this chuck wagon competition that was sitting beside an alpine roller coaster, I can't help but wish that some of these theme parks would have more, shall we say, culturally authentic experiences. It would be great to have all kinds of things like this where real people come in from all over the country, from all over the world to participate in this. I know that a lot of theme parks try to do that, but maybe this whole chuck wagon thing is worth preserving. I don't know. It's brand new to me, right? I mean, I just stopped in to see what the heck this was. But the sights and smells, all of it was fantastic. Now, I do want to talk about mountain coasters and how they're sort of taking over Tennessee, and I'm sure they're taking over some other places as well. They are quite unique in regards to how they function, the way that they contrast against your traditional roller coaster. And so let's talk about some of those things, because you might think that a mountain roller coaster is sort of a cheap alternative to a major theme park amusement ride. That's not necessarily true. And as you're watching this video, I think you'll get the idea of it. Clearly something is going on here, because just by my count, I counted at least a dozen different roller coasters all over the mountains of Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. And these were popular. Parking lots were filled. For about $18, you could ride one of these. And then the cool thing was that almost all of these roller coasters, once you were off, then you could just pay like half the cost, maybe even less than that, to ride again. And so there was incentive to do it over again. One of the cool things was that when you paid that lesser amount, you could also wait until the evening and come back and get a completely different experience. Now, The reason that I say that these are not cheap knockoffs is because it's a very different experience. The lift hill, for example, takes a very long time to go up by virtue of the fact that you're going up a mountain. And as you're going up the mountain, the lift hill experience is actually pleasant. So you might think about a lift hill on a traditional roller coaster. It can be very boring, except for the anticipation that you feel. You know, all you're doing is looking down and maybe seeing the sights around you. But on these mountain coasters, you can actually see wildlife. There's water running down beside you in these creeks. You can see all kinds of beautiful pieces of nature around you, and vistas potentially as well. And so it's not a bad thing the lift hill takes so long to do. It's more like a nature excursion. When you do reach the top of these roller coasters, it's also a very different experience. And there are some pros and cons here versus your traditional roller coaster in a theme park. For example, because you're only one vehicle, and that's one or two people riding it, almost all of these come with some sort of braking system. Now, that means that you can go really fast if you don't touch the brake. In fact, I would say that these are quite often, they at least feel faster than a normal roller coaster. Now, we're not talking about giga coasters or any of these things that, top 60 miles per hour, but these feel really fast. And you are able then to determine the level of thrill that that you prefer. So your preferred thrill level is a great way of being able to let a small child ride something that then also your 15, 16, 17-year-old can hop on and enjoy just as much, right? Because you can brake or you cannot. And that completely changes the experience. Another thing that makes these unique is that when you ride them, you are not going to have any inclines after you take off from the first hill. Now, I think that's a con. I think that's a negative about them. Everything so far has been positive. But because they have the braking system, the designers of these roller coasters cannot put an incline, because what if you had someone braking to the point that they wouldn't go up the next hill? So for the most part, they're completely downhill. Another con is that because of that same situation, I don't see a good way to do many inversions. It is possible, I think, to do a corkscrew, but that would also require that you have more than a lap bar, and that seems to be part of being able to lure the biggest audience possible, is just having that lap bar. Still, these are really, really fun, and the nature aspect of them makes them quite different. Now, you might say to yourself, well, why would I not just go to a theme park and ride roller coasters? Why would I want to go to Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge in East Tennessee and search out these different roller coasters that are on the sides of the road? And let me say this, they're kind of like little entertainment centers. But yes, the primary reason to pull off is to get on the roller coaster. And to that I say, well, this is a unique experience. And when you go to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, you find that this is a straight up tourism town, right? Both of these. And because of that, when you're there, you're looking for mini golf or go-karts or retail spaces, restaurants. Gatlinburg is fully walkable, and yes, it has mountain roller coasters as well, many of them. And so, being in these towns is sort of like being in a huge theme park. It's very spread out, and then you have to do like the old days with Disneyland, where you're paying for each individual attraction. But that's not to say that we should disregard these rides or that we should think that they're less than. As you're watching this video, this experience, this is my filming of it, this is on par with Space Mountain. I really mean that. This is definitely on par with Space Mountain in Disney World. And how much are you going to pay for that lightning lane? And yet here you get to see all kinds of nature. You get to see all kinds of vistas. You can hear people in the background yelling, whooping, and they're happy. And that's a really cool thing. Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg may not be, the vacation location for everybody. Certainly if you're on the West Coast, this is a big trip to take out there. But having not been in a while, I have to say that I was very impressed with the amount of expansion that has happened. The new stuff that's all over the place. And yes, some of the stuff, in my opinion, is a little bit lowbrow. I will fully admit that. But most of the newer stuff is exceedingly high quality and fantastic. If you haven't watched the video yet where we review Anakeesta, the theme park that sits on top of a mountaintop, well, you definitely need to. And frankly, I think it's not going to be long before we see Universal Studios or some other theme park challenge Dollywood on its home turf.
I say like this whole thing being in the mountainside, going up through the trees, through nature, as opposed to like just a theme park in general. It was quite different, and taking like a few minutes to get to the top gave you a lot of time to process what you were about to go through. Also, like the fact that you were like able to control entirely how fast you went and brake entirely if you wanted to, pretty different. The fact that we're alone, maybe in groups of 2, was pretty different from most roller coasters. So it's like it's a dynamic experience being around like by yourself the whole time. I remember I was sort of going, I felt like I was a Mongolian throat singer, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a fun time. I enjoyed myself very thoroughly.
So that's the show for today, folks. This is the kind of content that I really enjoy making myself. This is telling us where to aim for. This is fun stuff that we can all go out and do. We can't just harp on things all the time. Yes, when entertainment companies do stupid things, I'm going to call it out and I'm going to criticize it, but we must begin looking for the companies out there and the places out there that are doing things right, the places that are so much fun to visit and to go to. Otherwise, we have nothing to aim for. And I hope that you're enjoying this kind of content as well. If you are, make sure to click the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. I covet your comments, drop one down below. And ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.